My plan is to continue fighting Trump, and he has taken a big step here in Texas toward his goal of one-man authoritarian rule with a totally compliant Congress that lets him do whatever he pleases. My colleague next door got one of the districts that was really mangled by the Trump effort. My district was left largely intact, but instead of defending his district, he's decided to come and run in mine. And faced with that possibility, tough decision, because I've represented this community, the only town I've ever called home for a long time. But I decided it's more important to unite the fight against Trump and try to stop him from getting all 5 seats than to fight a colleague and divide my community. And so if the courts choose to impose these Trump extreme gerrymandered districts in place, I'll step aside, but I won't step aside from the battle against Trump, because our nation has never been in greater peril concerning its democracy than we are right now.
So you will not run in the district that will be drawn around where you currently live. Just for my friends in Texas who live there and are wondering, is there any possibility you might seek out a different district?
Not really. You know, the advantage that is being lost in Congressman Casar surrendering his district to Trump, where he has a larger Hispanic majority than he does today in his district, is the power of incumbency there and the power of motivating disaffected Hispanics, a growing population in Texas that we are not winning at the rate we should. And so we need a strong Hispanic candidate in that district to appeal to people of all ethnicities, but particularly the Hispanic majority. I'm familiar with the area, but the idea that I would abandon my district where I have more than 2/3 of the people I represent today and go to his just does not make any sense.
Congressman, how far in California we've seen Governor Gavin Newsom push through this effort that could redraw the districts there and benefit Democrats? How far should Democrats take this now, in your mind, in other states?
Well, if we want to save democracy in America and not let Trump do whatever he pleases, perhaps even postponing future elections, we have to do all that we can. And I commend in the strongest terms Governor Newsom, my colleague Zoe Lofgren, who's the dean of the California delegation, and former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We have to get those 5 seats, because the path forward out of Texas is not a happy path. In Missouri, we could lose 1 or 2 people. In Indiana, Vice President Vance has been demanding that both Democrats, so that there'll be no Democratic representation in the state of Indiana. In Ohio, we're under court order. I would see 2, maybe 3 people there. And then in Florida, always competing with Texas to be the worst and often winning, we could lose 3 to 5 seats there. That's why it's so important that we contest these seats in Texas. Just because they're nominally plus 10 Trump districts, that's the high watermark. That doesn't mean that a strong Democratic candidate can't compete. And that's what I'm about, is working with other people to try to narrow the number of seats he goes out of Texas with.
Congressman, I want to read you a new threat from President Trump against someone who has been publicly critical of him. Late yesterday, President Trump on social media basically threatened an investigation of former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie over the 2013 so-called Bridgegate scandal, when lanes were closed on the George Washington Bridge, increasing traffic there. 2013, mind you. President Trump wrote, "Chris refused to take responsibility for these criminal acts for the sake of justice. Perhaps we should start looking at the very serious situation again. No one is above the law." Now, that phrase, "no one is above the law," is the very same phrase that FBI Director Kash Patel used, posted on social media during the FBI search of John Bolton's home. The similarity here is that Chris Christie, like John Bolton, just publicly criticized President Trump. Listen to what Chris Christie said yesterday, just a few hours before President Trump threatened this investigation.
Donald Trump sees himself as the person who gets to decide everything. And he doesn't care about any separation. In fact, he absolutely rejects the idea that there should be separation between criminal investigations and the politically elected leader of the United States.
What's your view of these threats of investigations and the very real, actually, fully active investigations?
Well, our president is the intimidator-in-chief, and he keeps intimidating and pushing the limits of the law because he's getting away with it. He has successfully intimidated some of the nation's most powerful law firms, some of the most powerful television networks, and he's continually trying to intimidate the judicial system. He doesn't have to worry about intimidating Congress because he already intimidated Republican colleagues so that they do whatever he wants. That's why this redistricting battle is not just an academic matter or a battle between political elites. It is about the future of our country. It is whether we have reproductive freedom, whether we have public schools, whether we have our freedoms or we have him dispatching military to one city after another. And if he can control the Congress in the future the way he controls it today, he will achieve unlimited power, the kind of tyranny that we've seen in too many other countries. Now's the time to push back while we still have the power. And why, if you live in Indiana or Missouri or Ohio or Florida, do all you can to try to stop this. And if you live in California, let's get this November referendum passed so that we have a chance to restrain him, a Congress with subpoena power and some appropriations power, a true check and balance, rather than a total concession to a wannabe tyrant.
I will say, you're talking about plans that have to do with the 2026 midterms. In the short term, the phrase you used was he will do it until he can't get away with it. What's to keep him, in your mind, from, quote, getting away with it until 2026?
Well, number one is courage. The fact that some people do have the courage to stand up and fight. And some of the law firms, for example, including one here in Texas, were successful in pushing back. I hope former Governor Christie, with whom I have seldom agreed politically, or John Bolton, the same thing, will stand firm. It is also an indication in his attacks on them that this has nothing to do with philosophy, Republican or Democrat, just as when he did nothing to the crowds that said hang Mike Pence. He is about Donald Trump, the party of one, the power of one, pushing back right now, insisting in legal action that our courts honor our rule of law is so very important. And in Congress, all of us have the responsibility on the Democratic side to keep speaking out as unified as possible with the message that there is an alternative, that we want to address the kitchen table issues that Americans face. And the way to do that is to have a Congress that's responsive to them, not one that is simply obedient to a tyrant like Donald Trump.